Over 30 years. Don's going to be appearing at the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas, April 9th through the 13th.
Nothing seemed to faze Johnny Carson. Not Hollywood royalty, not world leaders, not the biggest names in music. For 3 decades, he ran his show with total command. Then one guest changed everything. Cameras caught him staring a beat too long, struggling to keep his usual rhythm, visibly thrown off by her presence alone. It wasn't planned, and it wasn't an act. Years later, Carson finally explained what happened that night, and why, out of thousands of guests, this one woman was the only person who ever truly intimidated him. The accidental road to stardom. Now, Johnny Carson would eventually become television royalty, but his beginnings were about as ordinary as they come. Born John William Carson on October 23, 1925, in Corning, Iowa, there was little to suggest that the quiet middle child of Homer, Kit Carson, a power company manager, and his wife Ruth, would one day become one of the most recognizable faces in American entertainment. His early life was rooted firmly in the Midwest. The Carson family moved frequently during his childhood, spending time in small Iowa towns like Avoca and Clarinda, before eventually settling in Norfolk, Nebraska. At the time, those constant relocations may have seemed like little more than a family inconvenience. In reality, they helped shape a young boy who learned how to adapt quickly to new surroundings and connect with different kinds of people, skills that would later become invaluable in show business. Unlike many entertainers who grew up around the industry, Carson had no Hollywood connections to lean on. His family's history was far removed from television studios and movie sets. Census records tracing back to the 1840s show generations of farmers and hard-working Midwestern families. Entertainment simply was not part of the family tradition. That changed because of one unexpected discovery. When Carson was 12 years old, he came across a copy of Hoffman's Book of Magic at a friend's house. The book instantly captured his imagination. Fascinated, he ordered a magician's kit and began practicing card tricks whenever he could. Family members became his first audience, and before long, he was amazing anyone willing to stop and watch. His mother enthusiastically encouraged the new hobby, even sewing him a cape for his performances. With that support, Carson's interest quickly grew into something more serious. By age 14, he had landed his first paid performance for the local Kiwanis Club, earning $3. It was a modest payday, but it marked the beginning of his career as an entertainer. Performing under the stage name The Great Carsoni, he soon became a familiar sight at county fairs, community gatherings, and firemen's picnics throughout Nebraska. As he grew older, Carson's talents expanded beyond magic. At Norfolk High School, he explored acting and discovered a talent for comedy. He also wrote a humor column for the school newspaper, sharpening the wit and timing that would later become his trademark. Without realizing it, he was laying the foundation for the style that would eventually make millions of viewers feel as though they were sitting in the room with him. Still, the path to entertainment was far from certain. After graduating from high school in 1943, Carson made a surprising decision. Instead of pursuing magic full-time, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy during World War II. He was commissioned as an ensign and assigned to the USS Pennsylvania, where he served as a communications officer responsible for decoding encrypted messages in the Pacific. Yet life in the Navy revealed more than one side of the young serviceman. Alongside his military duties, Carson continued practicing magic and spent plenty of time in the boxing ring, compiling an impressive amateur record of 15 wins, no losses, and 1 draw. Fortunately, the war ended before he saw active combat. Even so, Carson managed to leave a lasting impression on those around him, not because of his military accomplishments, but because of his ability to entertain. One story from his service years would become especially significant. During his time in the Navy, Carson met U.S. Secretary of the Navy James V. Forrestal. When Forrestal asked what he planned to do after leaving the service, Carson gave an unexpected answer. He said he wanted to become a magician. Skeptical but intrigued, Forrestal challenged the young officer to prove it. Carson responded by performing a card trick on the spot. The routine was a success, earning a reaction from a man known for being difficult to impress. For Carson, the moment carried an important lesson. If he could entertain someone as intimidating and influential as the Secretary of the Navy, then perhaps he could entertain anyone. All he needed was a stage. After leaving the Navy, Johnny Carson returned to civilian life with a clearer sense of direction. He enrolled at the University of Nebraska, where he joined the Phi Gamma Delta fraternity and continued performing magic whenever he could. By then, he was no longer the kid calling himself the Great Carsoni at local fairs. His act had become polished enough to earn him as much as $25 per performance. But as his audiences grew, Carson began to notice something important. The tricks impressed people, but the jokes were what they remembered. That realization followed him into the classroom. While most students wrote traditional research papers, Carson approached his college thesis in a way that reflected the entertainer he was becoming. Titled How to Write Comedy for Radio, the project examined the mechanics of humor through recorded sketches from popular radio programs. Using his own narration, he broke down the techniques that made audiences laugh and explained why they worked. It was a creative and ambitious piece of work that showcased both his analytical mind and his growing passion for comedy. He completed his studies in just 3 years, graduating in 1949. Even before earning his degree, Carson had already begun finding his way into broadcasting. He landed a job at KFAB Radio, gaining valuable experience behind a microphone. After graduation, he stayed in Omaha and worked for WOW-AM and WOW-TV, taking on a variety of roles that included disc jockey, weather reporter, and commercial announcer. The assignments were far from glamorous, but they allowed him to sharpen his timing, develop confidence on air, and learn the everyday realities of television and radio. Then came an opportunity that changed everything. In 1951, a former college connection helped Carson secure a position at KNXT, a CBS affiliate in Los Angeles. It was his first real step into the entertainment capital of the world. Working with limited resources and a small budget, he created Carson's Cellar, a Sunday afternoon comedy program built around sketches and radio-style humor. At first, it seemed like just another local television show. But behind the scenes, something remarkable was happening. The program began attracting a loyal following, and among its viewers were some of the biggest names in comedy. Legends such as Fred Allen, Jack Benny, and Red Skelton took notice of the young performer with the quick wit and effortless delivery. One admirer, in particular, would change Carson's career. In 1953, Red Skelton hired him as a writer for his nationally known television program. It was a major opportunity, but Carson's biggest break came under circumstances nobody could have predicted. In 1954, disaster struck just before a live broadcast when Skelton accidentally knocked himself unconscious shortly before airtime. With the show only minutes away from going live, someone had to step in. Carson suddenly found himself standing in the spotlight, filling the role of one of television's biggest stars with almost no preparation. Rather than panic, he trusted his instincts. The performance was a success. His natural charm, confidence, and comedic timing carried him through the broadcast, and audiences responded immediately. More importantly, television executives were watching. Impressed by his ability to save the show under pressure, CBS rewarded Carson with a program of his own. In 1955, he debuted The Johnny Carson Show. On paper, it looked like the breakthrough he had been waiting for. In reality, the production struggled from the start. Creative problems, constant turnover among writers and directors, and inconsistent direction prevented the show from finding its footing. After just 39 weeks, CBS canceled it. For Carson, the failure was devastating. After years of climbing toward success, it felt as though his biggest opportunity had slipped away. Many aspiring entertainers would have walked away at that point. Carson chose a different path. Determined to keep going, he borrowed money from his father and moved to New York City. There, he gained access to the influential Friars Club, where comedians, writers, and television personalities gathered. His sharp wit and effortless storytelling quickly earned respect among industry insiders. The experience reinforced a belief that would carry him through future setbacks. The failure of one show did not define his talent. That persistence paid off. In 1957, ABC offered Carson a chance to host the daytime quiz show, Who Do You Trust? What initially seemed like a modest assignment became the turning point his career desperately needed. Over the next 5 years, the program helped rebuild his reputation and introduced millions of viewers to his unique blend of humor and charm. Just as importantly, it led him to the partnership that would define the next chapter of his career. While hosting the show, Carson developed an immediate chemistry with announcer Ed McMahon. The contrast between Carson's quick wit and McMahon's steady presence transformed a simple quiz show into one of daytime television's most entertaining programs. Together, they formed a partnership built on timing, trust, and genuine friendship. It was a combination that would soon become legendary. And while Carson had finally re-established himself as a television star, he knew there was still a bigger prize ahead. Daytime television had given him a second chance. Now, his sights were set on something even greater, the crown of late-night television. The empire Carson fought for. When Jack Paar announced that he would be stepping away from The Tonight Show, NBC quickly identified the man they wanted to replace him, Johnny Carson. Surprisingly, Carson's first response was no. Years later, it would seem almost impossible to imagine anyone turning down what would become the most coveted job in late-night television. But Carson wasn't being difficult. He was genuinely intimidated by the challenge. Hosting a nightly program for nearly 2 hours, carrying conversations with celebrities, and keeping audiences entertained night after night felt like an enormous responsibility. The future king of late-night television wasn't worried about succeeding. He was worried about failing. NBC, however, believed they had found the right man. The network continued pursuing him, and eventually Carson agreed. On October 1, 1962, he officially took over The Tonight Show. The transition was not an instant triumph. To help launch the new era, NBC filled the program with some of the biggest names in entertainment. Major stars appeared on the show, lending their support and star power to the new host. Yet despite the impressive guest list, the ratings during Carson's first year were only modest. The program was successful enough to survive, but it had not yet become the cultural force it would eventually be. That changed when Carson stopped trying to fit into someone else's mold and started making the show his own. One of his smartest decisions was bringing Ed McMahon with him. McMahon's booming introduction became an iconic part of American television, instantly setting the tone for each night's broadcast. Viewers knew exactly what was coming the moment they heard his voice. Carson also developed a structure that would become the blueprint for virtually every late-night talk show that followed. Each episode opened with a carefully crafted monologue filled with quick, topical jokes. Carson was meticulous about pacing, making sure no single subject dominated the routine. From there, the show moved into comedy sketches, celebrity interviews, and musical performances. Today, that format feels familiar because Carson helped define it. But structure alone wasn't what made him special. What truly separated Carson from his competitors was his personality. Small touches, like his famous phantom golf swing after a monologue, became instantly recognizable trademarks. Meanwhile, recurring characters such as Karnak the Magnificent and Art Fern allowed him to showcase a range of comedic talents that extended far beyond simple joke-telling. Before long, Carson wasn't just hosting late-night television, he was dominating it. His influence became so significant that even acclaimed filmmaker Billy Wilder praised his unique ability to connect with audiences. Carson had become a nightly companion for millions of Americans, whether they were night owls unable to sleep or early risers catching the final moments before bed. While his professional life was reaching extraordinary heights, his personal life was becoming increasingly complicated. Carson had married his college sweetheart, Jody Wolcott, in 1948. Before their marriage, she had even assisted him during some of his magic performances. Together they raised 3 sons and appeared, from the outside, to have built a happy family life. The reality was far more complicated. Over time, both Carson and Wolcott became involved in extramarital relationships, and the marriage eventually unraveled. In 1963, the couple divorced, bringing an end to a relationship that had lasted more than a decade. Carson moved on quickly. That same year, he married Joanne Copeland, a model and actress. The marriage lasted until 1972, before ending in another highly publicized divorce. The settlement was costly, but by then Carson's career had reached a level where he could comfortably absorb the financial hit. His success continued to grow throughout the 1970s. By the middle of the decade, Carson was drawing some of the largest audiences on television. His popularity translated into enormous earnings, making him one of the highest-paid personalities in the entertainment industry. The Tonight Show had become more than a television program. It was a cultural institution. Yet despite his dominance, Carson faced one major problem. He was the face of the show, but he did not own it. In 1979, that issue sparked a major conflict between Carson and NBC. What followed was a high-stakes battle over compensation, creative control, and ownership rights. Rival networks watched closely, hoping to lure television's most valuable star away from NBC. Carson ultimately emerged victorious. The negotiations resulted in a significant salary increase, reduced working hours, and, perhaps most importantly, ownership rights connected to The Tonight Show and its extensive archive. It was a remarkable achievement and a rare example of a television personality gaining substantial control over the very program that had made him famous. Meanwhile, his personal life continued to make headlines. In 1972, Carson surprised nearly everyone around him when he revealed that he had secretly married Joanna Holland earlier that same day. The announcement stunned friends, colleagues, and even many close associates who had no idea he was involved in a serious relationship. The marriage lasted more than a decade, making it one of Carson's longest relationships. However, when it ended, the divorce became another lengthy and expensive legal battle. By the time the settlement was finalized, Holland had received a substantial financial award that reflected Carson's immense wealth and success. Eventually, Carson found a more lasting partnership. In 1987, he married Alexis Maas. Unlike his previous marriages, this relationship endured. The two remained together for the rest of Carson's life, providing a level of stability that had often been missing from his earlier years. Through all of his romantic ups and downs, Carson maintained his sense of humor. He frequently joked about his marital history, often turning his own mistakes into material for laughs. That self-deprecating style made him seem approachable, But there was another side to Carson that audiences didn't always see. In 1973, he found himself at the center of one of the most famous moments in television history when he invited Uri Geller onto The Tonight Show. Geller claimed to possess psychic abilities and had built a growing reputation through demonstrations involving spoon bending and other seemingly paranormal feats. Carson, who had a lifelong interest in magic and understood how easily audiences could be deceived, approached the appearance with skepticism. To prevent any possibility of trickery, he quietly worked with magician and noted skeptic James Randi. Together, they ensured that the props used during the broadcast would be tightly controlled. The result was uncomfortable television. As the show unfolded, Geller struggled to perform the demonstrations he had become famous for. Under the pressure of a live audience and unfamiliar conditions, the feats simply failed to materialize. The awkwardness became impossible to ignore as viewers watched him attempt to explain why his abilities were not working. For many observers, it was a devastating moment. Yet the outcome was not what Carson expected. Rather than destroying Geller's reputation, the appearance generated enormous public interest. Some viewers interpreted his struggles as evidence that he was genuine rather than fraudulent. Instead of fading away, Geller's fame actually increased, and the incident became one of the most discussed moments of his career. It was a reminder that television often produces unpredictable results. Carson learned a similar lesson when an offhand joke about a toilet paper shortage sparked a wave of public panic. Many viewers misunderstood the joke, rushed to stores, and unintentionally helped create the very shortage Carson had been joking about. His influence had become so powerful that even casual remarks could affect behavior across the country. That influence occasionally created enemies as well. One of the most famous feuds involved entertainer Wayne Newton. After losing out on a deal involving the Aladdin Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Carson reportedly made a series of jokes at Newton's expense. Newton did not appreciate the attention and publicly criticized Carson years later, accusing him of being unnecessarily harsh. According to Newton, the tension eventually escalated into a direct confrontation, after which the jokes largely stopped. Other relationships suffered as well. Carson was fiercely loyal, but he could also hold grudges. When former Tonight Show figures pursued opportunities of their own, he sometimes viewed their decisions as personal betrayals. Perhaps the most famous example involved Joan Rivers. After she launched her own competing talk show in 1986, Carson severed ties with her completely. The two never reconciled. By the 1980s, Carson remained the undisputed king of late-night television. Yet beneath the success, the wealth, and the laughter, signs were beginning to emerge that the television landscape was changing. For the first time in decades, the man who had defined late-night television was approaching a crossroads. The tragic final chapter. In 1992, after 3 decades at the center of American late-night television, Johnny Carson made an announcement that stunned millions of viewers. He had decided it was time to walk away. For 30 years, Carson had been a nightly fixture in homes across the country. He had survived changing trends, shifting audiences, and countless competitors. Yet unlike many television legends, he chose to leave on his own terms. He wasn't pushed out, and he wasn't fading from relevance. He stepped away while still at the top of his game. NBC understood the magnitude of the moment. This wasn't simply the end of a television show, it was the end of an era. To mark the occasion, the network devoted 2 nights to Carson's farewell. The first celebration took place on May 21, 1992, and featured 2 guests who perfectly captured the spirit of Carson's career: Robin Williams and Bette Midler. Williams arrived with the same unpredictable energy that had made him one of the most beloved comedians in America. He carried an unusual rocking chair and immediately launched into a stream of jokes and impressions. Carson could barely contain his laughter as the two comedians traded stories and playful impersonations. It felt less like a television interview and more like two friends enjoying one final conversation. Later, Bette Midler took the stage and brought a completely different energy. Her performance was heartfelt, emotional, and deeply personal. She sang several songs throughout the evening, including a moving rendition of One for My Baby and One More for the Road, with lyrics adapted to honor Carson. As the performance came to an end, the normally composed host appeared visibly emotional. It was one of the rare moments when viewers caught a glimpse behind the curtain and saw the man rather than the performer. The following night, May 22, 1992, marked the final episode of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Rather than filling the show with celebrities and elaborate tributes, Carson chose a quieter approach. The program opened with clips from his very first broadcast in 1962, reminding viewers just how remarkable the journey had been. Over 3 decades, Carson had walked through those famous curtains nearly 5,000 times, greeted each night by Ed McMahon's legendary introduction. For the final time, Carson sat on the familiar stool at center stage and delivered a monologue. The atmosphere inside the studio felt different from a normal broadcast. The audience consisted largely of staff members, friends, and family. It was less a television event and more a gathering of the people who had helped build the show over the years. During the broadcast, Carson reflected on his career with gratitude. He spoke warmly about his years on television and admitted that if given the opportunity, he would gladly do it all again. He also shared a deeply personal thought about his son, Rick, who had died in a tragic accident the previous year. Carson acknowledged that the evening would have felt complete if Rick could have been there to share it. It was a rare and touching moment from a man who usually kept his emotions carefully guarded. When the show ended, Carson offered a simple farewell and walked away from the desk that had made him a television icon. His departure created a void that seemed impossible to fill. For years, many viewers had assumed that David Letterman would eventually inherit Carson's throne. Letterman had built a loyal following with his own late-night program and had long been viewed as Carson's natural successor. Carson himself reportedly preferred Letterman for the role. NBC had other plans. Instead, the network selected Jay Leno to take over The Tonight Show. The decision shocked many within the industry and sparked one of the most famous rivalries in television history. Feeling overlooked and frustrated, Letterman left NBC and launched The Late Show on CBS in 1993, setting the stage for a fierce ratings battle that would dominate late-night television for years. The situation also damaged Carson's relationship with Leno. Carson believed that stories had been circulated suggesting NBC wanted him out before his retirement. Although Leno consistently denied any involvement, Carson never fully accepted those explanations. As a result, he never appeared on Leno's version of The Tonight Show, a decision that underscored how deeply the controversy had affected him. Yet even after leaving television, Carson never truly stopped being a comedian. One of retirement's best-kept secrets was his continued relationship with David Letterman. Away from the public eye, Carson occasionally faxed jokes to Letterman's writers. Some of those jokes made their way directly into Letterman's monologues, allowing Carson's comedic voice to quietly live on even after he had left the spotlight. For the most part, however, retirement was exactly what Carson wanted. He declined interviews, avoided public appearances, and turned down countless opportunities to return to television. After spending decades as one of the most recognizable people in America, he embraced a life of privacy. Then, in 1999, his health took a serious turn. On March 19th, Carson suffered a major heart attack at his Malibu home and underwent emergency quadruple bypass surgery. The health scare was widely linked to a habit that had followed him for much of his life: smoking. For years, Carson had been a heavy smoker, at times consuming several packs of cigarettes a day. He often joked about the habit during his career, but the long-term consequences eventually caught up with him. By 2002, Carson revealed that he was battling emphysema. Although he insisted he was not terminally ill, his health continued to decline. On January 23, 2005, Johnny Carson died at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was 79 years old. The cause of death was respiratory failure resulting from emphysema. Johnny Carson couldn't stop look at her. Over the course of his 30-year run on The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson interviewed thousands of guests. From Hollywood legends and political figures to comedians and musicians, he welcomed an astonishing variety of people to his famous couch. Some became such regular fixtures on the program that they appeared dozens of times. Comedians like Don Rickles and actors like Burt Reynolds were practically part of the show's extended family, each making well over 100 appearances throughout the years. By that point, Carson had developed a reputation as television's ultimate conversationalist. He always seemed relaxed, quick-witted, and completely in control. Whether he was interviewing a nervous newcomer or a global superstar, he rarely appeared rattled. His confidence felt effortless, and viewers often assumed there was no guest he couldn't handle. But even Carson had his exceptions. During a 1987 appearance by Betty White, the conversation took an interesting turn. White asked a question that audiences had probably wondered about for years. After interviewing so many famous people, was there anyone who had ever made Johnny Carson nervous? The answer came surprisingly fast. According to Carson, there was one guest who managed to shake his confidence in a way few others ever had: Audrey Hepburn. The admission caught many people off guard. After all, this was the same host who had spent decades sitting across from presidents, movie stars, and some of the biggest personalities in entertainment. Yet more than a decade after interviewing Hepburn on The Tonight Show, Carson still remembered how intimidated he had felt in her presence. It wasn't because she was difficult or unfriendly. Quite the opposite. Carson explained that Hepburn carried herself with such elegance, grace, and poise that he found himself unusually unsure of how to approach her. She wasn't distant or cold. There was simply a level of refinement about her that left him feeling slightly out of his element, something that almost never happened during an interview. To understand why Hepburn had that effect, it helps to look at who she was by that stage of her life. By the time she appeared on Carson's show, Hepburn had already spent decades building one of the most respected careers in entertainment. She had conquered Hollywood with unforgettable performances, become a fashion icon admired around the world, and earned a reputation as one of the most beloved actresses of her generation. But her legacy extended far beyond film. In later years, Hepburn became widely admired for her humanitarian work, dedicating much of her time to helping children through UNICEF. Her compassion, dignity, and commitment to charitable causes only added to the admiration people already felt for her. For Carson, meeting someone with that combination of talent, elegance, and global respect created a rare moment of uncertainty. The man who spent every night putting guests at ease suddenly found himself trying to keep up with someone whose presence seemed larger than life. It was an unusual role reversal. The king of late-night television had interviewed countless legends during his career, but Audrey Hepburn remained one of the very few people who could make him feel like the nervous one in the room. And perhaps that's what makes the story so revealing. Behind the confidence, the quick jokes, and the polished television persona was still a human being capable of feeling awestruck. Even Johnny Carson, it turns out, could occasionally be starstruck.